Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Well Self Podcast. I am Nicole.
And I'm Coach.
And we are excited to have with us once again Pablo Del Real from Soil and Soul. Hello, Pablo.
Hello, hello.
Pablo, it is always a joy to be with you. I just want to remind our community, our audience, of who you are. Pablo is a full-time mindfulness teacher and aspiring peacemaker. I love that. That's beautiful. He is the founder and co-executive director of Soil and Soul, a nonprofit agency growing the well-being of people, place, and planet. Pablo has been a presenter at the Gandhi King Conference, the Peace and Justice Studies Association Conference, the American Academy of Religion Southeast Region Conference, and the Wild Goose Festival, to name some of few relevant speaking engagements. In 2009, Pablo attended a 5-day retreat led by Thich Nhat Hanh, and in 2012, Pablo completed the 10-day International Nonviolence Institute at URI with Bernard Lafayette, the co-founder of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and staff member of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. So, Pablo, what an astounding resume. I always love talking about your experiences when you come to our audience and chat with us, and the amazing work and the amazing experiences you've had surrounding the topics that we bring forth.
Well, thank you, Sister Nicole, Brother John. You all are much more accomplished than I am. I'm a mere amateur, but as you know, there's some advantages to being amateurs. But yeah, I do have a foot in the professional world for sure. And really appreciate this podcast, the Well Self Podcast, and the opportunity to have conversation with you all and with your listeners.
Oh, well, thank you for that. We're happy to have you. And today's topic is really about our listeners, our community, the people around us, and with your experiences in connecting to different religions and also holding your own faith. Our topic today is about creating an intentional community of like-minded people. We always like to connect to wellness dimensions, so we're considering our spiritual wellness today. We are considering our intellectual wellness today. We're considering our emotional wellness today, and how we interact with our environment, our environmental wellness. So there's a lot of different wellness ideas that we connect to with this conversation today. Really, when you are in the position that you're in, people like you who grew up in a faith and have explored other ways of connecting to the creator, the divine, the spiritual themes, it can be a lonely place. And the idea of intentional community, you don't realize it, but is vital.
It sure is. And yeah, to your point, Nicole, it can be a solitary kind of exercise in the beginning. But any journey, whether it's an inner journey or outer journey, I think involves, well, the hero's journey, right? Which has multiple steps, including mentors, teachers, obstacles, threats, depending on your language, gods, goddesses, the abyss. So it's really a massive kind of concept, this journey. But it can feel lonely for sure, especially when we're starting to explore maybe parts of our own understanding that don't match up with maybe our parents' understanding or our faith community's understanding. And so that's where we can start to feel the walls maybe kind of closing in on us and feeling a little bit alone in that journey.
We were talking about the level of relatedness in for you. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah. I think, we come into this world with many, many relations, but we come in as individuals on some level. And that already becomes a tricky dynamic, right? Because we have all these relations coming into the world out of our mother's womb, maybe into our father's arms, maybe not, into this natural world, into the cosmos. So many interdependent connections, interconnections. And so there is this kind of base relatedness. All my relations is a phrase that the natives use, the natives of this continent, to acknowledge that we are not alone, that we are not individuals. And that kind of echoes this idea from Ubuntu, right? Desmond Tutu, the great Christian archbishop from South Africa, used to talk a little bit about Ubuntu, that I am because you are, and you are because I am. So we can't exist without each other. So there's this kind of base relatedness, but we don't always see it, we don't always feel it because we live in a culture of individualism. And the mainstream culture, the popular culture is all about, number one, what's in it for me? And so there's kind of a separation that happens in our minds and in our spirits, which supports a more kind of egocentric view, saying, oh, yeah, I just need to take care of myself, to just go after my own goals. And that, if it's not openly said, it's kind of assumed in our culture. And so there's a dichotomy there, right? There's a dualism between relatedness. I am related to everything else, everyone else. But at the same time, my culture is telling me that I'm an individual and I just need to look out for myself. So there's tension there.
So how do we do this? How do we as like-minded people set intentions to stay in touch, to maintain connections?
Yeah, well, I think it's challenging, but I think it's also very possible, especially today, right? There's so much more exploration. There's so many more kind of personal journeys leading to openness, which is a crucial element here, I think. Not only the like-mindedness. Let's come back to that phrase, because it may seem on the surface that we're like-minded, but as we start to relate and get to know one another, we're going to come to some places where our minds are not alike. We're going to find some differences, and then maybe, you know, subtle or superficial differences that we can overcome, but there may be some deeper ones. And so part of the formula for me, in my experience of relating to others and finding and co-creating more of an intentional kind of spiritual community, there are at least three parts to it. One is finding the others, and we talked a little bit about that on our conversation together with Wiley. Just getting out there. Coach John was telling us that just getting out there, right? Exploring the world right down the street, right on the corner. There may be somebody who's doing exactly what we're looking to do, or maybe the same questions that we have. And so finding the others is step number one in my experience. But that's not enough, right? Because we found each other. Okay, what's the next step? The next step in my mind is seeing if we can get along. It's not always so easy to get along, right? Especially the closer we become in a community. Let's say we start working together, we start sharing a place together, we start charging for work together, we start owning things together. That's where the differences can crop up, right? And can we get along despite those differences? And then finally, it really is the working together. can we work together? Can we do things together? And if so, what are the results of those things? So it's kind of a three-part formula, finding the others, seeing if we can get along, and then working together and gauging how that goes and having, some feedback opportunities and loops to be able to grow together as well. I should probably add that phase. Yeah, because this really all should come together in growing together all along the way, every point.
It's very interesting to have this conversation because community is important. And but in life, a lot of us can probably say that we have tried communities and realize those communities may not work for us, or we have caught ourselves trying to help do something in a community that does not align with who we are or where we are. And so those steps I think are very important. I think, like I say, can we work together? Are we on the same mindset? Can we build together? Can we coexist? And I believe it can happen. I really do, and I've seen communities thrive through this here. And I think on a spiritual level, it can happen as well if we can just shed some ideas or thoughts that have been placed inside of us that doesn't really carry no weight. It doesn't carry no weight for me to be envious of you. It doesn't carry any weight if I'm being judgmental of you. It carries a lot of weight if I can help uplift you and you uplift me, because you don't know what space someone is in at that time in their life. So community can really be a benefit to everyone's life.
Yeah, no question. But to your point, John, it can also be a place where there's discomfort, or worse, there can be harm, there can be trauma. So that's where I think the intentionality comes in, right? How do I relate to others in a way that is going to be uplifting, encouraging, skillful, uh, and at the same time harmless and free from divisiveness, free from abuse, free from false speech. So there definitely always kind of two uh, sides to the equation here, right? So
Yes,
the positive side, and then there's the negative side.
yes, they coexist, and it's important that we identify that. And um, it's 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 good to try to find those things out in the beginning, but from my background in the church world, I know communities are built, and I found myself in communities that got kind of selfish, if that's a good way of putting it. It's about me and my circle, and that's it. But I was more of a mindset, if we can build together amongst ourselves, it is up to us to share with others that's around us. So it makes me come to this question: is how can we build upon a community that we have already created or developed? What do you think, Brother Pablo?
Well, yeah, I'm kind of curious to hear Sister Nicole's response to that too, but I'm happy to go first on this one. Yeah, I think education. I'm a teacher at heart, and I think we spoke a little bit already about growing and growing together. And if I'm not growing, then maybe I'm dying more than I am living in a way. The same way as plants, right? That plant is constantly growing, but once it stops growing, then it's a little bit more in the dying category than the living category. And I think it's the same for our spirits. And a spirit can be educated, a spirit can be guided, a spirit uh, can be forgiven. They can learn to forgive. So there are skills, inner skills. I'm going to land on inner skills are really the keys to building upon a community that already exists, whether it's a family, a faith community, a business, a school community, it's really developing those inner skills, which translate to outer skills as well. It's not 100% inner game. There's a tight interrelation between the inner skills and the outer skills. They go together, and if we ignore either side, the inside or the outside, then we're not going to be able to grow together. We're not going to have that healthy, holistic community that we all need.
I love that, and I love the plant metaphor as well. We love plant metaphors around here, but we I love the bringing that in because it makes me think of the idea of pruning. And when you don't always have to repot your plant. You don't always have to dig up a plant. You can change the direction of what's happening with that plant by doing some pruning. And it might mean, okay, I'm pruning away these conversations within this community that no longer work for me. I'm pruning away these ideals that these narrow thoughts that just don't work for me anymore. And I'm still in community with the same people. If it works for you, the same organizations, the same routines, but you're pulling away from what is no longer working, maybe setting up boundaries, um, shifting routines, spending a little bit more time focused on ways to edify yourself or those around you. That way you don't have to feel like you're cutting off the community that you have while at the same time exploring other thoughts, options, and bringing new individuals into your life. And I think that's kind of what we're doing here too with the podcast and with the community that we've set up. There are individuals that we've been friends with, we've been in relation with, we know that are like-minded, where we've had conversations, and at the same time bringing in new people into our lives to develop the type of community we want moving forward. So some creative pruning, thoughtful, intentional pruning in our lives, I think is a great way to build upon the community that we already have.
Yeah, no question. And to get a little more specific about it, there are positive and fruitful energies that are part of human nature, and then there are toxic and harmful energies that are also part of human nature. Coming back to that interconnectedness, right? And holding these things, both the toxic energies and the antidotes to those energies. And so this is a place also for focus in growing in an already existing community. And where I've found a lot of fruitfulness is in, naming those energies, right? And placing those energies. So part of my framework when I work with trainees or students is what we call the four spheres of awareness. And that's kind of my take on ancient, wisdom that might have, spoken in the Jewish tradition and might have said something like, hear, listen, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. You all must love the Lord your God, our God, with all your heart, mind, with all your soul, spirit, and with all your strength, body. So to kind of update those phrases, that language, I just talk about the body as one sphere of awareness, the spirit as two, the mind as the third, and then existence as the fourth, right? And because there's, no, or at least not much room for argument there. So we're not even talking about divinity or anything like that. But we're talking about the human experience and places in the human experience, the body, the spirit, the mind. And so those toxic energies live in there, as do the antidotes. And so the the toxic energy of the mind is delusion, being disconnected from reality. When I have, thoughts or ideas, emotions that are really not connected to the true nature of reality, I'm a little delusional. So, that's something I'm not going to get away from entirely. But with the support of a loving community, they can help me when I am in those moments of delusion and say, hey, Pablo, maybe you need to take a look at this, or when you said this thing, I didn't feel like that was really accurate, those kinds of things. So that's for number one. Number two is hatred. And that's the second toxic energy. And that lives in the spirit. And that's just, dividing myself, as we were talking earlier, from the interconnection, the relatedness, dividing myself from that interrelation from all things. And number three, toxic energy is greed. Just wanting more than I need, excess of what my body needs, what my mind needs, what my spirit needs. So using that in the broadest possible sense, right? Not just the greed for money, but the greed for fame, for power, for sex, for food, for possessions. So these are powerful, powerful forces that are in me and around me, at work, all the time, right now. So how am I going to overcome those? And how am I going to do that together with others, unless I first name them?
Nice. Nice. I love that. I love speaking with you. You just feed me so well. It's like sit at the buffet table. I just sit here and just eat and eat and eat. And you're right. And that energy, it makes a difference to be able to recognize those energies when they happen, or have a community that can help you check your energy. We are involved in spaces all day long that everywhere we go is not a clean energy, and these energies are transferable. So we can get at the traffic light and someone cut us off, and we just left a room that is full of energy that's not positive. That energy can transfer into us, and like you and now we're barking at this here person because that's energy. And I've learned that through my time now, just being aware of my own energy. I like to take a moment and meditate between spaces, to make sure that I am checking myself before I go into another meeting or go into another space, because um, it's that quick. It's that quick. And you're right. We're fighting even Paul, was it Paul in the Bible say, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but principalities of high spirits in our high places. So, and another one said that when I went to do good, evil was always present, so we have to be aware that these things can happen. And so to have someone like you, have Nicole around me, it really helps me just enjoy being me. It doesn't change me, and it helps me enjoy me being me.
Pablo, what do you consider the antidotes, or what do you reflect on as the antidotes to these energies?
Well, yeah, I'm really just renewing and updating some of the wisdom that's already out there. But sometimes we need to refresh the language of the tribe, right? That's the job of the poet, and that's part of my work. So the antidote to delusion, which is the fruit of the mind, is wisdom. And it's really that simple. And wisdom, one way to put it, is seeing the whole, oneness, seeing my interconnectedness, my interrelatedness, all my relations, with no separation. So
Mm.
that's the antidote to delusion at the level of the mind. The words that we're using, by the way, I should say, they're single words for dynamic energies, for powerful forces. So it's not always, a simple one-to-one match.
For
Sometimes there
sure.
are other words, that catch the edges of what we're talking about. But if we follow this path and we go now to the level of the spirit, the antidote, the word that I like to use there, the antidote to the hatred, is courage. It takes
Mm.
courage to be in relationship with my enemies. Even with my friends sometimes, with my family especially, right? Listen, in the mindfulness world, we have a saying, you know, if you think you're enlightened, try spending a week with your family. So that takes courage, right? To be in those relationships, to heal,
Absolutely.
to acknowledge the hurt, the harm, even if it was unintentional. So courage, by the way, the short description that I like there is preserving the whole oneness. And then the third antidote at the level of the body to greed, the toxin there, is kindness. Kindness. And that can be described as serving the whole oneness. So you can kind of see the pattern here, the unity of the antidotes. We are seeing the whole oneness with wisdom. We're preserving the whole oneness with courage. We're serving the whole oneness with kindness. And then there's this fourth sphere of awareness, this existence level, which we can't do without, right?
Right.
And the beauty of that level is kind of what John touched on, you know, in between activities, maybe taking that moment just to be, to get in touch with the nourishing and healing energy inside me and around me. Because when I touch that level of existence, there is no toxic energy there. That one's free. And so that's why I spend so much time teaching and living as much as I can mindfulness and meditation, because those are the skills that bring us in touch with that level of existence, which is free from toxic energy. And it only takes a quick breath in with awareness of breathing, right? Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out, as the great teacher Thich Nhat Hanh so wonderfully taught us. So yeah, there is no toxin at that level, and it's an antidote unto itself when we get in touch with that still small voice in us and around us.
When we think about creating community, how does the spiritual perspective contribute to that particular challenge? And I'm thinking about that question and thinking about becoming more of a neighbor of the world and not just my own community, like my own physical community, but being, we want to travel more. We want to experience other cultures and other areas. And that takes its own amount of courage because you're going to be faced with different, worldviews, perspectives that are different to yours. And I'm finding that I'm very uncomfortable with spiritual perspectives that just take a very hard line. And that's which is very different than where I was, where at some point where I was the hardliner with my spiritual perspectives. And now at this stage in my life, I'm not comfortable around the this is the way that it's got to be crowd. Um, when you're trying to develop community, what are your thoughts there when that is an interaction? Like this is a hard line. We all have them. We all have our boundaries.
Yes. Yeah. And those are healthy, or should be, right? Healthy boundaries. But I think to your question, what are healthy boundaries here, and what are the unhealthy ones? Because there can be boundaries that are too rigid, and certainly, I'm sure. I was going to say I've had my share of those in the past, and people would probably look at me today and say, "Oh, you still have some, Brother Pablo, some rigid boundaries." But look, in some instances, we need them, right? There are certain things that need hard and fast and rigid boundaries around harm, things like that. But when it comes to worldview, which I really think is the key phrase here, Nicole, that you mentioned, yes, I think we're at a place in humanity, that's ready for some evolution there, because too many of the faith traditions, perhaps as they're experienced today or practiced today, are exclusive. You're either in, you're out, and if you're out, then I don't need you, and good luck. But I think at the root of, or at the heart of all the faith traditions, that view of, you're out, I don't need you, is not there. It's not there in the teachings. It's there in the practice. But I think all the wisdom traditions say, welcome the stranger, take care of the enemy, So how do we do that? Yeah, how do we adopt that worldview? And we've touched on it just a little bit in our conversations, but coming back to, words and names and phrases, what's been helping me is this concept of the way with 1,000 names. I can have my worldview, let's call it, I'm just going to use an example because that's the way with 1,000 names is kind of now my worldview. That's how I approach worldview. And when I'm asked to speak somewhere, I sometimes am invited to interfaith activities, and they'll say, what faith tradition is yours? How do you identify, or how do you want us to identify you? And I just say wisdom, just give me the generic wisdom, because that's what all the traditions have in common, right? Once we start to use the labels, then we start to develop these whole worldviews that flow out of these labels. And so if I say I'm Christian, well, that's going to create a reaction. If I say I'm Muslim, that's going to create some kind of thinking pattern. If I say I'm Jewish, then there are some other thoughts that come up with that. So there's an opportunity to have a worldview without attachment, and that's open and embracing these other worldviews, which I think at their core are also open and embracing. So I'm calling that the way with 1,000 names. And you might have your own worldview that involves maybe some Christianity, maybe some other faith tradition elements. But again, we're coming back to the same thing. Forgiveness, for example, nobody's got a monopoly on that. That is not a Christian skill. It's not a Muslim skill. It's a human skill. So, I think if we can be open to the highest version of the traditions, the wisdom traditions that we're going to encounter out there in the world, and take some of the Eastern wisdom with us, which from the Tao Te Ching says, don't cast away the wicked person, cast away their wickedness. In the Christian faith, we might say, hate the sin, love the sinner. So there are different ways to say these things, but we're really getting at the same kind of interrelatedness. We're all interconnected. How are we going to get along here? Because as our friend, Brother Martin Luther King said, we're either going to learn how to live together or as brothers and sisters, or we're going to perish together as fools.
Amen. Amen. I love that. I think about language a lot. Language is important, especially traveling a lot. You think about your language, how you speak. We either speak life or we can speak harm, and it's up to us how we choose to speak. And using words, I love that wisdom. I love that. I consider myself peace. I'm peace. I come to share peace, love, and support, and to get away from just the dynamic stance that I'm Christian or a pastor or these titles that, like you say, in worldview, they're causing chaos. And we don't, if you don't align with that, then it's hard to use these names sometimes. I had let go pastor. I have let go of Christian. I've let go of certain titles that seems to cause division because I want to be peace. It's beautiful. I welcome Brother Wisdom. I love you. I love that. I love it.
You know, I love that as well. I love that the idea of wisdom and peace. The thought that came to me this morning was how important the idea of love is. Um, love and compassion, and I feel like Ziggy Marley, love is my religion, and that is really my biggest guiding spiritual force is the love and respect for myself and love and respect and honor for others, for those around me, the world around me, the earth. But it's the force that moves me more than anything else. And it keeps me in spiritual longing and in relational longing to others. So when I think about this idea of intentional community, it's stronger. And this is one thing I want to make sure that we touch on before we close out, being intentional rather than being passive. And that was something that you touched on, Pablo, when we were talking about this, that we might have to go out and find the community that we need, set up and create the community that we need, and taking steps and not expecting that it's just going to happen, to build, to tap into our courage, to tap into our resourcefulness, use whatever tools we have in order to create community. Does that sound, do you share those thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an ongoing project, intentional community. And it can have, failures, breakdowns, triumphs, victories, defeats, all of the experiences. Yeah, that we can live, as humans, living this human experience. But it can also, be joyful. It's work, coming back to the plant metaphor. Growing is work for the tree. I think the brotherhood, the sisterhood, the friendship, the oneness. There's work there, but if it's not joyful, then we're not doing it right. You know, so that's one way to understand it, and I think that yeah, the intentionality that you touched on, that we're touching on, has to be connected to effort. It can't just be an idea. And so, the place where I work, Soil and Soul, there's a lot of effort here to grow in our skill level, our inner skills, our outer skills, our relating skills. There's a little movement out there called authentic relating, which is very aligned with what we're doing, right? So it addresses, like we do, speech patterns, because not only do we have thought patterns, we also have speech patterns, behavior patterns, and if we're doing things automatically and maybe a way that we've absorbed from families, from other places, may not be the ways that we want to be. And so there's, some intentionality there about how do I want to grow? Can I name the growth that I'm seeking for myself and together with others? And that might be deep listening, for example, is one of the circle agreements that we invite every time we get together. Can we listen to each other just to understand, not to respond, without judgment and with a little
Beautiful.
compassion. Yeah, coming back to what Coach John said earlier, right? My what's my speech like? Well, that's, another one of our circle agreements, loving speech, because the tongue has the power of life and death as far as the spirit's concerned. I can clip somebody's wings in an instant, or I can give them wings to fly in an instant. So yeah, it all takes a little work. And coming back to, we were talking about the trees and the pruning, Nicole, and yeah, that pruning can be very fruitful, right? In the natural world, sometimes a little pruning of the tree, the fruit tree, will induce a stress response, which will create more fruit than usual. So it's not that the pruning does harm. It's not that the recognition of wrong in the case of humans does harm if we do it skillfully. It can be fruitful to say, yeah, thank you for pruning, my unskillful words. I shouldn't have said that. Or, one of my colleagues once, she said to me, we've been invaded by greed. And she was right. We were going after some funding that was really beyond the scope of what was realistic, what was practical, what could be expected, just because we thought there was an outside chance. And so, we need the pruning. I need the pruning to recognize when that greed is getting a little too strong in relation to the kindness.
That's powerful, and that can happen in community. That support, that helpful feedback from others, it can inspire and promote growth. I think that's beautiful.
I like the way you said it. It's when you prune and you prune it right, it can encourage that tree or that plant to grow in ways you couldn't imagine. And the words in community, someone speaking to you with that love, that wisdom, and that kindness can really it don't tear down. It opens your eyes, because a lot of times we're not thinking on a greed mindset. We're thinking on that help mindset. That with this here, how many more people we could help, how many more communities you see what I'm saying? So at times, if that money isn't at a place where we can use it right now, maybe being able to be aware of that is powerful, for your sister to be able to speak to you in that manner and allow you to be able to process that. And see, that's what I love about this type of community, because I've been in communities where those words would have tore down people, they would have destroyed them or made them feel less of. And that's why I like the community that we're involved in now, because growth happens. Growth. And I think that's what's important. We strive every day to grow. And if I don't grow, then I become stagnated. And then before you know it, then I'd go on, like I say, as if my plant has produced all the fruit it can produce, and now it's going on that decline side. And I don't want to be on that decline side. I love plants that can reproduce itself. I love, so there's always continuous growth in that. I could talk about plants as metaphor all day. I love plants, and the way, so much we learn from them. One thing about a plant, you're not going to plant a tomato seed and get an apple. That tomato seed going to give you a tomato. And that's all I ask for myself or anyone else, to be yourself so that you can get what you need out of this world and out of this community, because love is needed. There's a lot of hurting souls and minds out here right now. And I believe that we need a space where people can breathe, where we can allow them to heal, allow them to be able to let go of the negative and be able to look at the positive antidotes, you know. And I really love those there. I love those very well.
You know, as we're thinking about creating intentional community, my thoughts to end towards wrapping up this conversation, my thoughts, I would like to encourage our listeners to put in that effort that, you know, we're talking about when you know, I need to make some changes. I need the support. I need like-minded individuals. I need to add more thought and perspective to my world. Start to seek out those like-minded organizations, places like Soil and Soul, our podcasts, other podcasts that connect to ideas that, you know, will bring you across different dimensions and different ideas and different ways that you can serve yourself, and start to make that part of your community. Go to different events that sound interesting to you, make friends, you know, just continue to bring your social media into it, so that as you're scrolling, as you're looking, start to pull like-minded individuals into your sphere, right? Like that's one way to start doing the work that we're talking about.
Yes, I love that. Being aware of what we're feeding our mind, body, and spirit. And that's beautiful. Brother Wisdom, you're always amazing. I applaud you so much, and I'm thankful that we connected and we are truly brothers. And Sister Love, that is a beautiful name for you because I see the love that goes out of you to everyone, the kids, the community, you know, just you help people that are in places that are in dark places at time, and I'm thankful for you. So I'm full. I'm I am full.
Yeah, it's a very fruitful conversation, I think, and appreciate the invitation to close out here with some final thoughts for this conversation with Brother Peace and Sister Love for today. Uh, I think there are lots of resources out there. You know, Nicole touched on a few of them as a way to get started or as a way to advance. You know, if you're in the South Florida area, please, by all means, look us up, Soil and Soul. We have a website, soilandsoul.org, and we offer that moment of freedom. You know, we don't do any preaching, really. We try to live these antidotes, the wisdom, the courage, and the kindness in our Soil and Soul circles. And they're offered twice a week. The Well Self podcast is a great resource with ongoing conversations. Some other resources to consider in terms of writing, like I like The Cottage. I don't know if anybody has heard of that one. It's on Substack. I follow a few writers on Substack, including Diana Butler Bass is the author of The Cottage. It's a weekly publication she puts out, usually something on the readings from the Christian tradition for that week. I find her to be really open and embracing kind of writer, and she's a church historian, so she's got an interesting
Oh,
take
beautiful.
on things. Yeah. We did mention Thich Nhat Hanh. He comes from the Plum Village community, which is a wonderful Buddhist community, very open and loving, and lots of resources there. And I suppose, yeah, One last one I'll mention is our partners here, the Coalition, the West Atlantic Redevelopment Coalition, here in Delray Beach. They're doing a lot of justice work here, trying to help this place where we work, the set in Delray Beach, redevelop without displacement. So they're supporting development without displacement for the residents of the set here. So those are just a few resources. Plenty more, I'm sure, on the Well Self podcast. You have lots of links to some of these things for building intentional community.
Absolutely. And we will definitely include the links that we talked about as we promote this episode. And I want to thank you for joining us, Coach. Of course, thank you for being here. And Pablo, thank you so much for your wisdom, for your time, for your energy and your effort and your beautiful thoughts towards humanity. And I'm looking forward to doing another episode with you. We'll have to come up with another topic. Plenty other topics that we can touch on, I'm sure. Right, Coach?
Yes, I'm pretty sure with these brilliant minds, we got plenty more to come. I love Brother Pablo. I am thankful for him, and I will see you sometime this summer. I'm going to catch up on my rounds, and we will see you one Saturday, and we'll be out there in fellowship with you guys. I enjoy that community. I really do. I enjoy all the texts. I love all that.
Well, that'd be great. Yeah, this is a great blessing for me to be part of your family, your spiritual family, the Well Self podcast, and your personal family. So thank you so much, Nicole, John.
Absolutely. We are, from us to you, to all of our listeners, all of our audience, we encourage you to continue to prioritize your wellness, and we wish you wellness. Be well, everyone. Bye.
The information and opinions that are expressed on this podcast are for education, information, and entertainment purposes only. The information is not intended as medical, psychiatric, or psychological advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please consult with a personal physician or other healthcare professional for your own specific mental and/or physical healthcare concerns. No physician, patient, or counselor-client relationship is created by listening to or watching this program. Do not avoid or delay seeking medical advice or attention from your healthcare provider because of something you learned about on this program.